Okay, have you got that now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so as I was saying, I've put quite a few slides on here, and I will rattle through the first ones, as I know that this will all be available for people to look back through later on. So I've got some introductory stuff to what is the Letcombe Brook and why it's important, and about the Letcombe Brook Project, and then I'll get more stuck into the issues affecting the brook and what we've been trying to do about it. And the question at the end, is it working or not? So there's a quick map there on your right showing the course of the Letcombe Brook, which originates out of the North Wessex Downs AONB in Letcombe Bassett, and flows basically north through Wantage Grove, East Hannay, and then joins the Childry Brook. So just a quick characteristics of a chalk stream. I've put them on the slide there. You can read them for yourselves, but everyone sort of imagines that, like in the picture there, nice clear water, lots of vegetation, very rich habitat, rich in oxygen, support lots of specialised wildlife. And it's probably worth just thinking about the fact how rare they are, the fact that there's only about 260 worldwide, and that 85% of them are in southern England. So you could pose the question, are they rarer than a rainforest? Well, yeah, in terms of habitat area, they certainly are. And it's some of our most famous rivers, the Tess, the Itchen, the Avon, the Kennet, that are world famous, particularly for trout fishing. They do support some rare and protected species, certainly on the Letcombe Brook. We've got all of those now, except for the bottom left there's a white-clawed crayfish, which we did used to have until about 2008, 2009, but we now seem to have lost them, as happens once you get your invasive signal crayfish, which carry the plague. But yeah, plenty of trout, lots of bullhead, good bat population. Otter are now very active on the brook, and water vole had a very good year last year, which is good news. I'll come back to that later on. And yeah, just a reminder how important rivers are as a wildlife corridor. You know, they are just such a natural corridor. They can link very important bits of habitat, and certainly the Letcombe Brook links 3 local wildlife sites along its route. And they also link a whole series of community green space through those populations that I mentioned. So I just show you the map at the start. Just a few more facts there. So it's coming out of the aquifer that's under the chalk downs there, flows for 12 or 13 kilometres, and as I said, joins the Childry Brook, which then flows out into the Ock and on into the Thames. We did used to have water abstracted for drinking water, and that finished almost exactly 2 years ago now. So we're back to natural flow, which, you know, we feel very, very lucky for. Water abstraction affects a lot of chalk streams. The chalk streams in the Chilterns area are certainly heavily impacted. So Letcombe Brook Project, we were actually established in 2003 out of concerns that were discussed between the Environment Agency and fellow the Whitehorse District Council. They decided something needed to be done about the decline of the brook and set up the project. Later became a charity in 2017, and I'm the part-time project officer. I work self-employed, and I work with the local community. My team of volunteers, without which I wouldn't get much done. So it's really, really good to be able to get out with them. And we get involved with all sorts of stuff, as it says there, education packages and local events too. Do have a look at the website, and if you like your wildlife, might well be worth joining the Facebook page, because there's a lot of stuff posted on that, and I'll come back to that later. So I've just listed our aims there. I'll maybe leave that one for people to have a look at another time, but just to mention that part of it is to conserve and enhance the biodiversity of the brook. So tried to go picture heavy on this, and I want to give you an idea of what a healthy chalk stream should look like, and hopefully that picture on the right fits with most people's idea of a chalk stream. A nice clean gravel bed, lots of in-stream vegetation. Ranunculus is your classic. Lots of starwort as well. Nice rich marginal vegetation. And what is it you need to have a healthy chalk stream? Well, the trinity of ecological health I've put there on the left: water quantity, water quality, and physical habitat quality. Now, you can't always do something about all of those three things. Water quantity, as I say, if you have abstraction, you're probably going to struggle, other than campaigning, to get that abstraction reduced. There's not a lot you can do about it. Water quality, again, sometimes it's difficult to do much about that. If you have a sewage treatment works, which is dumping untreated sewage in your river, again, it's going to be a campaign job, but you might be able to deal with some runoff issues and with how the land is managed that borders the river. What we've tended to get stuck into is the last one, the physical habitat quality, which is much more something we can get on and we can improve. So a little bit about the pressures on the brook. Fragmentation is a big issue. There used to be 10 mills along the brook in 1086. Most of the mills are still there. Some of them now have hydroelectric schemes. Some of them just still have the sluices and structures in place, which still cause a blockage to fish passage. And in the case of the old mill in Wantage, it also appears to block the movement of water vole upstream. Used to be cress beds, once very famous within England. The watercress from Letcombe was sold at Covent Garden. Apparently that used to be the one to head for. Picture on the left is just another type of odd structure that we have across the brook, like a little letterbox opening just to hold up the flow and send some water around a bypass channel. Used to have a big issue with something as seemingly innocuous as feeding the ducks. This is what the banks ended up like in the centre of Wantage, just from the number of ducks being fed. You can see from the photo they were all over the shop, all over the road. Erosion of the banks. You can see the bottom right picture there. It got really, really bad. So we did an education campaign, and things have improved drastically. And we try and encourage people not to feed the ducks, and if they do feed the ducks, just to feed small amounts and natural foods rather than bread. So barriers I mentioned, there's something like 30 barriers along the Letcombe Brook, which, as I said, is only about 12 kilometres. Some of them are, like on the left, a small waterfall. Trout might get up that, but a lot of the other smaller fish like minnows, sticklebacks, stone loach are still going to struggle. The centre one is something else indeed. That's on the Beebout Reserve at Letcombe. It's a 2.5 metre dam. Not even a very healthy trout is going to get up that, that's for sure. So yeah, complete blockage at that point. And on the right is another sort of man-made waterfall with a drop of about 1 metre. Again, it just slices the brook in half. So you end up with a lot of sort of separate populations of trout, although there are trout all the way through the brook. Those populations are separated from each other, and a pollution issue could knock them out of one section and they wouldn't be able to recolonize. The brook fails on the Water Framework Directive for fish, and that's because there should be more coarse fish through the brook, and these barriers prevent coarse fish from moving up into the other sections. Other issues range of your sort of urban river issues there. The bottom left picture is what we used to do in the 60s and 70s when we built a housing estate. Just absolutely horrifies me. There's a picture in Central Grove where houses were built, right close to the edge of the banks. These people live on a river and they can't even see it because it's behind a wall. I think that's really sad. Obviously, complete lack of habitat. Everything's gone. Sandbag banks, concrete walls, straight channel through the middle. No good to man or beast, really, in my opinion. Surface water runoff, big issue up in Letcombe. A lot of silt in the brook. The silt smothers the nice chalk bed and ruins the trout spawning ground. So trying to deal with that is an important issue, and obviously it also brings in a lot of contaminants that affect water quality in other ways. Dumping of sewage, picture on the right is a picture in Humberditch. That wasn't due to dumping, that was due to a blockage and an overflow of untreated sewage. And that's all sewage fungus. That was going straight into the Letcombe Brook at Wantage. One of the other issues is just lack of management or poor management. Overshading, as Ruth mentioned, is a big issue along the Letcombe Brook. If you try and look at it on Google Maps, all you can see is a line of trees. You won't actually see much in the way of water. I think it's probably something like 90% shade if you looked at the brook as a whole. And you just end up with the complete loss of riparian habitat. You end up with no in-stream vegetation, just a clear gravel bed, none of your marginal vegetation, and basically just sort of willow and bramble in many areas, and some places creating a complete tunnel across the brook. And yeah, just a real loss of biodiversity in those areas. As was mentioned, things like bramble and nettle are great for wildlife too, but they can grow in plenty of other places, and the river habitat is much rarer, and we've prioritised that. Land use, you can see footpath one side of the river there on the left, and someone's decided to change their nice natural bank into a stone bank. That's water vole habitat there, and we did ask them to stop, and it does seem to have stopped at the moment. Central pitch of the farmer was cropping to within a metre of the riverbank. There should be a nice 6 metre buffer there now. I'm happy to say there is a 6 metre buffer there now after we spoke to the EA and spoke to the farmer involved. Another picture of grove there with your walls either side of the river. That makes me very sad. I grew up in Grove as a kid, and yeah, such a shame. Fortunately, we don't do things quite as badly as that these days. Just some more poor management, sprayed off banks. This is a really nice site that used to have water voles out in the countryside, south of Grove, and south of Wantage, and they took the decision to spray those banks with glyphosate. That's exactly the area you shouldn't spray with glyphosate. You need EA permission to spray within 3 meters of the bank top. So we had words, again, ploughing right up to the river edge, and that sort of classic shot of your overshaded, you can't really see in that picture, but that is a bare bed, no in-stream vegetation, no marginal riparian vegetation. This is a shot of Grove Green. That's how it used to look when the cows were allowed in to just graze about and wander about in the brook. It now looks very different, I'm pleased to say, but there's always conflict. Some people think it should look like that. Some people have concerns over flooding and think that it would be a much better river channel to convey water if it still looked like that. But trying to meet people halfway. So just to remind ourselves what I think a healthy chalk stream should look like. Again, that rich vegetation. You can see on the left, livestock have been fenced off from the bank top, and that looks a whole lot more healthy. A few other factors, mink are certainly one. We've lost all our water voles south of Wantage. We certainly had them. They were the remaining population initially when we first surveyed the Letcombe Brook, and we caught and killed 3 mink in about 2016, 2017. Unfortunately, the water voles haven't been able to repopulate that area, and my theory is that Wantage Mill is preventing them from getting into that area. So we'll be looking at possibly a reintroduction scheme. We're monitoring for mink now. We have 11 rafts out along the brook, and we haven't had any caught for at least 3 years now. The signal crayfish, pretty ubiquitous these days, and absolutely nothing we can do about it. Wild Crew have done some studies and shown just you can catch them to your heart's delight, and it doesn't impact on their numbers. The otters enjoy eating them anyway, so case of living with them. Balsam, we do tackle, and we're having a lot of success with that. We've pushed most of it a long way downstream now, past Hanny. We're still having to pull. We do it by hand, and yeah, the stands have reduced massively. It takes an awful lot less time now, so it's just a little mop up, and it's had an impact. It's left space for other native flora to colonize. So what are we doing about it? So when I started almost 4 years ago, I increased the amount of volunteering that we were doing. We do a midweek group and a weekend group now, and just get the volunteers out there caring for their local river, doing mainly habitat work, lots of pollarding and coppicing to let in light, but also bank work, pushing back the bramble, scything the banks, scything any of the really sort of dense stands, to just open things up a little bit, and lots of litter picking. Some of the pollarding we can do ourselves, and some of it we have to pay for contractors. So I'm chainsaw trained. I can do chainsaw work on the ground, but I can't do that. My feet have to stay very much on the ground. So we rely on funding, and we've received funding from the Environment Agency, from their WEEF fund, and from Tow and Grundon, to help pay for those big trees to be got back into pollard. And then if we can bring them down to a low enough height, like in the previous slide there, we can then take care of those with a pole saw going forward, keep them on a short rotation, keep them small, and keep that light getting into the river. The other sort of things we've been doing are putting in brushwood berms. Sections of the river are over wide and they tend to drop out silt. So by pinching the flow, you increase the velocity, and that scours the bed, revealing your nice gravels, which is so important for fish spawning. And you can use, a lot of the material you can use is self-generated. You don't need to be off buying, faggots and things like that. You can create it using the brash that you've generated for your coppicing and pollarding. Large woody debris is really important in rivers. So sometimes it's just a case of leaving things in there. With my assistant there, Tom, just for scale, there's no way we were going to move that anyway. Let's be honest. But large woody debris is really important. Kicks the flow around, creates a bit of scour. It's obviously important habitat itself for invertebrates, somewhere for fish to hide, sometimes a way for mammals to cross the river. On the left, we've got a familiar site for a lot of people, I'm sure, Jim, who volunteers on a lot of projects. Scything, so just to do some light management, do short sections at a time, particularly if you're looking at water vole habitat. And putting in large woody debris in places that don't have any. So we've felled a tree there, staked it in, made sure it's nice and secure, again, just to kick the flow around, cause some scour, cause a nice deep hole, just add some habitat variation. Sometimes it's just a case of leaving it alone, not leave that big bit of large woody debris in there, leave the vegetation. Some people think it should be all pulled out, dragged out, because they're concerned about flooding. So there's an area on the left that's recovering, following the pollarding work. You see the marginal vegetation there is bouncing back, and the starwort in stream 2, really, really important habitat for small fish and all the invertebrates that live in amongst it, as is the Ranunculus beds. We've had a few sort of more delicate species pop through. The cookie flower on the left there has appeared in a couple of places. And water figwort has done very well, particularly where we've knocked the balsam back, which is great. And the water voles seem to love eating that. Yellow flag in the background of that picture, you can see all the water mint that's come through as well in the margins. And things like, water forget-me-not, purple leaf stripes, one of my favourites. It's so good for the pollinators. Lots of brook lime. Ranunculus is an odd one. We have it in the upper reaches and the lower reaches, and not in the middle. We do some monitoring. Our volunteers take part in the River Flow Partnership, looking at invertebrate populations, and that gives you a score for river health, and it's a good way of assessing if you've had a pollution incident.
1 minute left.
Thank you. This is what we're looking for when we do the invertebrate sampling, and these are the important stuff, as it says there. That's what's feeding everything else, and certainly feeding these guys. I've already mentioned the importance of the clean gravel, but obviously they need food too. But the other fish are what we're lacking. We do have lots of bullhead, but the stone loach and the minnow, stone loach just seem to be downstream, and no doubt those barriers are a problem for them. We survey for other stuff too, and our water vole survey we carried out last year, and we do that in partnership with BBAL, and that indicated they had a very good year last year, which is great. They're in all the sections of the brook up until wantage, and then none above. And that's the sort of stuff we're looking for when we're surveying for them. That's an example of a couple of the maps. So just showing how populations have varied over time. It's actually the red that show where water voles are. So in the left-hand picture there wasn't a lot of water vole activity back in 2010. By 2014, things had improved quite a lot. The other thing that's had an amazing recovery are the otters. And I was just going to show you this quick clip, which I managed to get on one of my trail cameras along the brook. I was just trying to see if they were using the culvert. I had no idea that I would get an otter nicely posing in the corner there, having a nice groom for those teeth. Really pleased to see that. I just wanted to mention quickly, I set up a Facebook group. I was quite cautious initially, and it has really raised the profile of the project. A lot of the members post amazing photos onto there, and it's just really raised interest and raised the profile of the brook, and sort of generated a really nice community. And off the back of that, we've managed to do a really nice exhibition at our local museum, the Vale and Downland Museum. That exhibition's on now until the end of the month. If you're in the area and fancy popping by, all those photos are taken by local members of the community that have been enjoying walking the brook and taking photos of the wildlife they see. Just popped a few useful resources on the end there, people might want to refer to, but yeah, just as a final comment, just to say we don't really know yet. We haven't done much in the way of surveying as to how well the work that we're carrying out has succeeded, but just from visual indicators, the flora has definitely bounced back very well. Water voles seem to be doing very well. It's going to be a much longer job removing barriers to improve things for fish, but it's early days and we seem to be going in the right direction. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's very interesting. Looks like making some good progress, and although I haven't necessarily got all of the monitoring done yet, those signs are looking good for the water voles and so on. So that's good to hear. Had a question come in around the arrival of the American crayfish. I don't know if you have you seen a change in the age structure of the fish population as a result of that, and are the otters, do you think, partially controlling them?
They're certainly eating them. I don't think there's any way they can eat enough to control them. No. The odd thing with the crayfish is they seem to appear in the middle of the catchment. They appeared in wantage. That's not what you'd expect to see. We'd have expected them to work their way up from the bottom end, up from the ox. So it would appear somebody introduced them either by accident or on purpose, probably by accident. And they do seem to be much higher numbers around wantage. And we don't see them really up at Letcombe, and we don't see much activity down in Hanny. So the whole brook isn't really blitzed by them yet. Can't really comment on the fish population structure because we've had very little done in the way of fish surveying. So and the otters are probably influencing that too, as are the blockages. There's so many other factors how you would isolate the impact of the crayfish. I don't really know.
Okay. Brian's raised many schemes like this are relying on local authority funding. Have you found any effects of that with recent constraints that they've been facing?
Yeah, we're really lucky. I should say a big thanks to both district, parish and town councils for funding the project, and that funds my core hours, and that allows me to go out and do the work. The Vale have had to reduce the funding, but they do continue to fund us. We have to do additional fundraising to keep going, and big thanks to Williams Formula 1 too, who have a stretch of the brook running through their site, and they've come on board too and helped top up to replace what we've lost from the Vale. So we're very lucky in that respect.
And the last one, you showed us quickly that you've got your photo exhibition on at the museum in Wantage. How long is that there for?
Till the end of the month.
Okay, so people can get down there and see that.
Yeah, do. Yeah, it's a lovely little museum, and there's some great images in there, some nice, really nice water vole ones, and lots of bird stuff. So I haven't really mentioned the birds. It does support a really good population, and it's great to have people out there. And the trail cams have been a really useful tool, as well as Ruth mentioned, for getting wildlife sightings, which we're encouraging people to put onto iRecord to improve the amount of species recording that goes on for the brook. It's really important just to try and show how precious it is, and the species that it supports. So really keen to get more surveying done and get more species data into yourselves.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for answering our questions.